Hello everyone. Hello everyone. If you are here, shout out to you. I hope you're doing okay and I hope you're fine. It's another live stream session, Saturday hangout with Valeen, Oseh. And today, as you all know, we have something very important to talk about. The usual thing is for me to go ahead to check in on you and ensure that you're doing fine. So if you're tuning in later, if you're watching this live session after the live is done, more like a replay, you can quickly and ensure to ask all of your questions in the comment section so that you get answers to them, okay? All right. So my name is valeenovarah and I am a cybersecurity graduate from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, UAB, and I am also an academic and career coach. So on this platform, I share my experiences here as an international student, and I also do respond to questions, answer questions about study abroad, and just be that guidance that you need. So if you're somebody who's struggling, you're stuck in your study abroad journey, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to go about it, you're confused, you don't even know what to say, you have a question, you can book a consultation with me and we will definitely give you an approach, an action plan, and strategies to go about your study abroad journey. And today I'm not doing it alone. I'm going to be here with my best friend from South Africa, Longbo, and we're going to be discussing about studying in South Africa, everything, funding, finding a job, finding a supervisor, living expenses, life after graduation, and we're also going to deep dive into our personal life, our preferences, our majors, our research interests, and things like that. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. And if you're seeing me, please, can you confirm that you can hear me speak? Because to be honest, I'm just talking and I don't even know if anybody can hear me speak. If you can hear me speak, please let me know in the comments or in the live chat as well. That would be absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So if you have any questions, don't forget to give us a huge like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to share. Invite your friends if you have somebody that's been talking about studying abroad and things like that, this is a channel for you and I am the person for you. So ensure you utilize this platform as much as possible. So I made a video recently where I shared places where you can study abroad for free. It's going to be in series. I've discussed a couple of countries and I'm going to be handling other countries as we go. But if you're seeing me right now, please leave a comment or just say something in the live chat so that I can pick on your question or your comment. Oh, great. Longbo is here. You see, she keeps the time. This is amazing. So, guys, I'm quickly going to have Longbo here, but let me quickly bring in her. Okay, so Daniel Obasi was here earlier, even before the live started. He was here though. I'm the first. Yes, we know, Daniel, you're the first. You're amazing. So I'm going to bring in, there's something I want to share with you people. Just some sort of, okay, let me add that here. This is it. So let's see if that is going to work. Perfect. Now we are talking. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Longbo here so that we can talk, about the business for today. But before we start, let me just read out a bio about Longbo in case you don't know her already. But if you were here last week, then you already know who Longbo is. So this is Longbo's bio. Longbo is currently a first-year PhD student in the field of human resource management at the University of Pretoria. Her research interests are centered around transformational change management, as well as gender and diversity in organizations. She became a member of the Golden Key International Honor Society in 2018. Wow. As validated by the Northwest University Podchest Room. Did I call that right? I'm sorry, in case I didn't. She was awarded the Northwest University Commercial Top Student Award in 2017. Go girl. And she was the BCom Honors Human Resource Management Top Student in 2018. That's what we're talking about. During her honors degree, she received the National Research Foundation NRF Honors Grant. As a master's student, Longbo acted as speaker at the Northwest University HR Tasks webinar in 2019 under the topic. I think my phone is messing up, but yeah, under the topic, the theme, the road to excellence. So that's a brief bio about Longbo, who is our speaker for the day. She's our guest, and so I'm going to go ahead and invite her already. Longbo, did I drop the link in the? Let me drop it so that you can call in right now. So I just dropped the link so she can jump on this live and we can, kick it off already. So if you're here, please give us a huge thumbs up wherever you're watching from. If you're watching from Facebook, our Facebook page or our Facebook, group or YouTube, just let me know in the comments down below. All right, just tell me, oh, we're here, we're from Team YouTube, we're Team Facebook, we're Team Facebook group. Just let me know. All right, and if you're here also from the Telegram group as well, let me know in the comments as well. And if you're here from South Africa, if you're a Longbo's friend, please let us know so we can give you a huge shout out as well. So, Longbo, are you still here? Okay. Are you still here? If you're seeing me and you can hear me, please feel free to let me know in the live chat as well. Let's see. If you have any study abroad questions, any questions as to personal development, productivity, time management, or anything, like that, leave them in the comments because, on Saturdays are the days I get to answer questions for free and in details. Do you understand? So utilize today's live session, make it as interactive as possible. And just, if you want to book a one-on-one session with me as well, you can click the link in the description and you see my consultation link. So you can have a private session with me outside YouTube, okay? And don't forget to join our Telegram group as well and follow us on all of our social media platforms. While we are waiting for Longbo, I just wanted to say something that I made a video talking about my experience trying to find a job in the United States of America. And one thing that we fail to plan for when we're coming here is that we just feel everything is going to happen the way we have planned them to happen, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. So when you come here and then you're like, okay, I'm coming here for my master's, and then after my master's I'm going to graduate and then get a job. What happens when you can't find a job? How do you navigate the whole process? How do you even begin to deal with yourself in that situation when you discover that, oh, it's not the way that you actually thought it would be? And for this time and era that we are, that is very unique because of the pandemic, it's even a lot more overwhelming, harder, tasking, and everything. So if you want a community of people like yourself, a community of people that are in the same space right now, please ensure that you click the link in my description or send me an email at valeenovarah@gmail.com and we can add you to that group where you get resources, one-on-one advice and strategies to follow so you can become an exceptional international student wherever you find yourself. So Longbo is here, so we're going to just have her do the needful. I'm also here to learn in case you're not aware. I see her trying to touch her eyes. She's wearing yellow, by the way. You guys can't see her, but I can see her. She's wearing yellow. She's looking very good. So over to Longbo.
Hi, Val.
Hello. Let me see. Can you say something?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. This is wonderful. I can hear you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You're looking wonderfully and beautifully made.
Thank you so much. I just woke up from a nap. We had classes and I was so exhausted afterwards. So
we are so sorry to have woken you up. So today is going to be very interesting. I know I've already gone ahead to introduce you, but you can do that as well, because I prefer to also hear it from like the horse's mouth, and then we can just proceed to talking about the life of a student in South Africa, what it is like to school in South Africa, everything from funding, finding the right school, finding the majors, and just everything. And at the tail end of it all, we talk about your journey as an
Mm-hmm.
individual, your major, your interest, and what the future holds. So this is your day. I'm just here to learn.
And thank you so much for that, Val. So as Val mentioned, my name is Longbo Capela. I am from South Africa. I'm a PhD, first year PhD student at the University of Pretoria. And I'm just trying, barely making it, but trying every day. So yeah, so I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invite, Val. As you know, I'm a follower of your platform, so it's really so great to have these conversations with you, you know, especially bearing in mind everything that I know about what the contribution or the brick that you're trying to put into the wall of just giving back to the youth and creating a platform where the youth is better informed about education opportunities, work opportunities abroad. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, what is it like finding a school in South Africa? And what are the chances for someone to even find a school generally?
So I would say for, let's say, undergraduate studies, I'd say it's fairly, I had a better experience finding a school for undergraduate studies, for honors, and all of that, as opposed to the PhD. With the PhD, I really struggled. I think I went through quite a number of universities, and the struggle was centered around trying to find a supervisor because you can't exactly go to a certain university if there isn't anyone who is a specialist within your particular field. But one thing I noticed is that with undergraduate studies at the moment, with COVID and everything that's happening, there have been a lot of challenges. I'm quite aware that there have been quite a lot of challenges with undergraduate students in securing their spaces within the South African universities, particularly when funding is something that's a scarce resource for you. So we're currently facing that challenge at the moment. But I would say for international students, especially when you get to the graduate level, master's, and the PhD level, I would think that international students have an advantage. There are a lot of funding opportunities for international students, specifically African students. Just before actually we went live, I was looking at this platform, which is Scholars for Development website. And there were just so many opportunities for African students to come to South Africa and pursue their studies, especially when your field is around development within the African context. So, yeah, so I would say that uh, there's a significant amount of opportunities for international students to come and study in South Africa.
Oh, so you mentioned that there are a lot of fundings for international students, especially the African, internationals. And you mentioned a website. I know that we didn't, discuss before now, but I would love to have the link so that I can drop them in the, description so that people who are interested can absolutely click on the link and, start doing whatever they need to do with it. So you mentioned that it is particularly harder for those interested in undergraduate programs. But is there like a difference between someone going for a graduate program and an undergraduate program in terms of requirement in finding a school?
Mm. So I'm not quite sure in terms of the requirements for undergrad because I lost matriculated or I left the schooling system back in 2008. So I've been around. So so I'm not quite sure in terms of the prerequisites. I remember in terms of the economic and management sciences, I think you needed a 60% in order to get into a particular program, 60% in Was it maths? I don't remember, Val. I will tell you that for masters and PhD level, I think the general percentage, specifically for masters, is about 60%, depending on the university. It may be 65% at different South African universities. So you have to get 60% within the particular discipline, like the modules of your specific discipline. So with me, it would maybe be an industrial psychology module or a human resource management module where I would have to get 60% in my undergrad in order to get in for masters. And I know for PhD, you have to get an average of 65%. Some universities 70%. In your particular discipline. So it would be, for me, industrial psychology or human resource management. So for other people in different disciplines, I think maybe they would have to look into the particular discipline that you're specializing in, and then ensure that you have about 60 to 70% average in order to get into the program.
Yeah. Is there any standardized test you have to take to get a school in South Africa, or it's just particularly having your high school diploma and things like that? Is there anything else? Because if you're coming to the United States, for example, you need to take things like TOEFL, IELTS, or all of those standardized tests. Do you do that for South African schools?
I know that when you leave high school, there is a test called the NBT. So I know that's normally taken once you move from the schooling system into higher education. But for graduate studies, what I had to undergo was a psychometrics test. So I'm not quite sure if that is the case for all disciplines, but once I was selected after applying to the PhD program and selected for the interviewing process, after doing my interviews and after we had a writing test that we had to do, after that I had to take a psychometrics test. So I know that with some disciplines, you may have to take that psychometrics test.
Okay, so I believe you guys can hear as well. So it depends on the school and it depends on the major as well. So figure out which one works and do your personal research to find out what is needed and expected for that particular school and course in South Africa. So moving on, you mentioned that it was hard for you to find a supervisor for your PhD program. Is that the case as well for a master's degree program? Do you need to find a supervisor really?
Well, my experience with the particular university that I was in for my master's, fortunately for me, I did my master's with the same university I did my honors with. So it was fairly easy. Even with that, I had to write the psychometrics test. We had an interviewing process, but there wasn't a prerequisite to have a supervisor beforehand. We kind of, I remember with our introductory session at the beginning of the year, that's when the academics within our department were introduced to us, and then we were tasked to try see whether there was maybe a link between our research interests and those of the particular academic. So I would say with masters, from my personal experience, I did not have to have a supervisor beforehand. I had a very clear idea of who I wanted to have as my supervisor based on my interests. But the thing is, you have to almost compete as students for a particular supervisor because it also depends on their capacity to take on students. I remember with my master's supervisor, she only had capacity for one student, whereas maybe others had the capacity for maybe 2 or 3. So it's important to also make sure that you have, I guess, you're up for the competition. You're up to really sell yourself to the academic and try show the alignment between your research interests and theirs. But to answer your question, no, I did not. For masters, I did not have to have a supervisor beforehand.
Okay, but you did mention that that is also important, and then it is important for you to be able to sell yourself, market yourself right. What do you think are the ways that someone can actually market themselves to a potential supervisor or to even stand out from the crowd?
So I would say, okay, just from, I think, a good academic history. I mean, it's not a big thing because the fact that you're all accepted to the program says something. So it may be a competitive advantage, but to a certain extent. But I would say that being well read within the particular subdiscipline or the particular topic field that you want to go into, and really showing the supervisor. I remember what I would do, even with the PhD applications, is that I was constantly writing these short pieces to kind of not only test myself and improve my writing skills, but those are good indicators to show the academic that you're serious about what you're doing. You know what I mean? And that you don't take for granted their time, because also you can't just expect them to figure out where you fit into the picture. So a good way to show that you are a good potential candidate to be supervised by them is really just showing how much you know. You don't have to know everything about what you want to do, but having ideas. I remember just sitting down with my supervisor, at master supervisor, and we just write down ideas. She'd ask me questions about, what do you think, what's the question that you want to solve? And I I was very fuzzy, but I was able to pinpoint exactly what I wanted to do. And at the time, it was policies within the HR field. So it's good to know, to have a good idea of what you want to research and communicate that to the supervisor so that they can then make the decision whether there is alignment between you and them in terms of research.
Absolutely amazing. I wish the way I'm just listening. I believe you guys know that I'm learning here. So when I say I'm learning, I'm learning. So sometimes I forget that I'm actually moderating and learning. So I'm leaning more towards the student part versus the moderator part. So please bear with me if I forget to ask questions immediately. So yeah, let's talk about finding schools. How is it like finding schools in South Africa? If I'm a novice, I don't even know where to go or how to begin. How can I find the right schools in South Africa?
I think, okay, so I'm going to speak more from the perspective of now the traditional university, but we do have other institutions, more like universities of technology, which I have never studied in, but it's really important to really first understand what you're trying to achieve in terms of your academics. Sometimes you may want to do a degree in biotechnology, and maybe a university like the traditional university may not be the ideal setup, because also there's that I remember when I was much younger, there was that whole kind of differentiation between the two, in terms of there are universities that are more technical and more practical, where you can gain practical experiences and all of that, and then you have more theoretical universities. I'm not quite sure if that's still the case, but the level of universities in terms of a university and a university of technology, I think, is on the same level. So it's really just important for you to understand where you want to go with your career, and whether there's a more technical element to your discipline or a more theoretical. So going back to your question, it's quite easy to find universities in South Africa. I think in each province we have about one university and one university of technology. I know here in Gauteng, then you have more of a broader array of universities. There's WITS, there's the University of Johannesburg, there's University of Pretoria. So you literally just need to Google or go to the university. Once you Google the university, go to the university's website, and there they normally have all the prerequisites in terms of what you need to have achieved academically within school or at another institution in order to qualify to get into the particular program. So I'd say it's fairly easy. You just need to Google the universities. And I think that the admission requirements are pretty fair. So if you are a hardworking student, I don't think it would be very difficult for you to be able to make the requirements and be able to get into a university of your choice.
Do you have an idea what the admission requirements are?
Okay, so I will speak on a graduate level. I know that there are certain universities that for master's degrees, you need to get an average of 60% in your particular discipline. I know that universities may be like UCT, and maybe here at the University of Pretoria, maybe WITS, you need to have an average of 65%, or it could be that you need 65%, 60% in certain in some of your modules, and the main modules within your discipline would need 65%. And then if you want to get into a PhD program, then you need to have between 65 and 70% average in order to get into that program. But at the same time, even though those are the requirements, it does tend to be competitive.
Oh, wow. I think we're losing. I think we are losing Longbo. But while we await Longbo to come back, I just wanted to give a shout out to Ife. This is for you. Ife has been moderating behind the scene in case you are wondering who Ife is. So finally we have Longbo back. So yeah. So welcome. So yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, so I think even though the requirements would be, let's say, PhD level 65 to 70%, it is competitive. I know for my particular program, we have a department, the HR department, we have about 4 sub-disciplines within our department, which is human resource management, industrial psychology, organizational behavior, and labor relations. And for our selection, they only chose 1 person for each. So you really, having the 65% or 70% does not necessarily guarantee you a spot. You have to still try go over and above, you know what I mean? I guess you'd say the organizational citizenship behavior within the academic context, where you have to always go over and above to try achieve as much as possible in order to have that competitive advantage over your peers. So even though those are the requirements, you have to always try to be at a better standing than that.
Okay, so is there a link between what you studied during your undergraduate days and then, to what you want to study during your graduate program? What if I'm someone who studied something else in my undergraduate days and I'm trying to transition into a different part? Is there a problem to that, or are South African schools welcoming to such students?
I think in certain disciplines, they are welcome to that. I think the business schools are more open to having people from different disciplines coming in and maybe doing an MBA or any of the other programs that they have within the school. But it is quite difficult to make that transition. I don't know. I'm curious to find out what your experience is, Val, because what I noticed is that with I remember applying to certain universities in the UK, and there I was more able to make the shift towards other disciplines. But it's not that easy here. You kind of stay within your discipline, or you stay within the department. So, for example, I'm within the HR department, so maybe I would be able to make a shift from HR to industrial psychology, but it's on certain levels, So I could have made that shift maybe at honors level to master's level. And then maybe I can also make a shift from HR to labor relations. So it's all within my department, but it would be very difficult for me to move from HR to, let's say,
Computer science.
the sciences. Yeah, exactly. So so I don't know, I'm curious to know, I don't think it's that easy on this side, but how is it that side in terms of making that shift in the
I
US?
think, yeah, in the US, I think it's very easy for people to actually transition from one major to another. Like, what is expected is when you're applying to such schools, you have to show in your statement of purpose why there's a shift. Why do you want this shift? I have this is my background. This is where I'm going to. So where's the balance? What happened? Is there something that happened that led to you wanting that change? Because if you're unable to prove that, then they're not going to get you admitted. But if you can actually tell them that this is the reason why, then they would listen to you a bit. But again, there's another caveat to it. When you are admitted into such programs, you are expected to take on some courses, more like prerequisites, so that you have a background and understanding of the now said, newfound career path that you want to take. So let's say you're coming in from I had someone who did biology or something, and now she's moving into cybersecurity or computer science or data science. She was admitted, but she had to take some courses that would introduce her to concepts in computer science. So you're not, because come to think of it, graduate school is pretty challenging. And then coming from a totally different background, it's a different thing entirely. So they don't want you to get in there and be overwhelmed by graduate school and then be overwhelmed by the fact that you're in a new field or department entirely. So they want to, most times it's usually one semester for you to take like the basics, introduction courses for you to get yourself adjusted and things like that. But it's pretty challenging. I tell people that if it's something that you want to do, ensure that it is something that you want to do. Make up your mind, because it's definitely not going to be easy. You need to be extra. You need to be ready and involved, and put yourself in it, because if you don't, you will lose not just that admission, but you also lose the money and time and everything that you've invested in. The money is not going to be refunded. So it's pretty much, but they do give you that option to transition from one course to the other. But it doesn't happen with PhD. I haven't, but I think, because I feel like most of the time transitions happen from like your bachelor's to your master's program. But for PhD, one would expect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I don't think that would really make a lot of sense, except it's an aspect of that department or that field that you've been in before time. So that's how it works here. So I'm curious to know
Mm.
what it is like, the living expenses in South Africa, because I hear it's pretty expensive, and I want to come to South Africa, and I'm thinking about the money. Girl, talk to me. How is it like? What's the living expenses in South Africa? How can someone actually cope and survive there?
Val, I really don't. It's definitely not as expensive as the US.
Of course, I know. I'm talking from the point of I'm in Nigeria
Yeah.
right now.
But I think the living expenses are relatively okay. It actually just depends where you end up with your in which university you end up. I know my experience, like I said, I was in the Northwest in Potchefstroom, and there everything was fairly cheap. In terms of like my accommodation, I don't think I was paying anything more than 3,800 for the place where I was living. Whereas now with the shift to Pretoria, ooh, it's a big shift. So my accommodation has almost doubled. I think it's around 6,000 something that I now have to, pay for accommodation. So it all depends. And I know when I was looking into universities in the Western Cape, specifically Cape Town, their accommodation is around 10,000 Rand, student accommodation. So it just really depends where you are geographically, and even like with your expenses in terms of just the normal living expenses for food and electricity and everything else, it all aligns. Because let's say in Potchefstroom, for example, I was paying way less for electricity than I do here in Pretoria. So it just depends where you are. The bigger the city, I guess, the more expensive it becomes for you as a student. But I would say with that, especially as an international student, and just like as a student that wants to really focus on their academics, or, maybe make a transition into academia, or whatever that may be, um, I think the best option when looking for, part-time work is to look within your department. Always have an ear out. Have good relations with with the academics within your department. Always be willing to, take on an opportunity, whether it's an opportunity to be a research assistant, a marker. When we were still doing face-to-face, when we were still going in person physically to university, becoming an invigilator, those small things, helping out with registration, or being part of the people that are working during graduations, those are the kinds of jobs that I think are the easiest to get, because you just need to have your ear out at all times, and so, because also everything else is just so time consuming. I don't know if you've ever experienced that with your experience in Birmingham, that like everything else just takes away from the work that you're trying to put in, or the effort, the amount of time you're trying to put into your studies. Whereas if it's within the department, there's almost like I guess like a, not alignment, but there's almost, there's a synergy that takes place there. And you don't spend as much time doing those things, but the remuneration can help you out quite a lot, So yeah.
I'm glad that you did bring in finding a job, because it's important for internationals to understand that while it is okay to school in a particular country, South Africa, for instance, we are interested in, what it is like finding a job there to survive, to, just make ends meet, to be able to pay off certain bills and take care of oneself while you're there. So I keep telling people that, like you just mentioned, that it is the first place you can actually get a job is within your department, because I mean it makes a lot of sense. So and being observant and asking questions would definitely help you to, find out when there are such opportunities or vacancies or openings available. Whereas when someone else is not asking the right questions, or not at the right place and at the right time, or it's not just observant, because sometimes you just see like it's posted on the board, and if you're not looking, you wouldn't know that there's an opening out there. But it's okay for me to know that while you're studying in South Africa, you can work. But what I am not sure about working as an international student in South Africa is, how much time you can work. In the US, you can only work for 20 hours a week. What is it like in South Africa?
I actually have a friend of mine that she's from Zimbabwe, and she tried to explain this to me a while back. It's so important to communicate with the people in your department. Not only, okay, so what I've found to really be very helpful from the beginning, from the time you start studying within your department, is to have good relations with the departmental secretary, whether it's the undergrad secretary or the secretary that's responsible for postgraduate students. Those people are probably the best people you can align yourself with, because I think apart from the fact that they know everything about what's happening in the department, also there's a certain level of just really having an in-depth understanding for the struggles that students go through, and so I know that if you communicate to the departmental secretary and you communicate maybe to the HOD, maybe they align you with or they link you up with the head of department or someone else who has the authority to actually even create a position. So this friend of mine had the school's head of, well, within the department in my previous university, it wasn't an actual department. There was a school within the Department of the Economic and Management Sciences. And she created a job for this friend of mine. And there, bearing in mind all the requirements for the amount of time that international students are allowed to work, they took that all into consideration when drawing up the conditions for her work. So also, I think it was very important, and it was good that she also communicated a lot of the struggles that she was having as an international student financially, whether it was with respect to rent or anything like that. And they almost, I don't know, molded the position to be able to give her just enough to, pay for this and just enough to do that and just enough. Also bearing in mind that she could only work a certain amount of hours. So communication is key. I feel like the secretaries and the academics, they're very empathetic, and they always are understanding towards the student struggles. So I'd say that communicating is very important, especially as an international student.
Sorry, I'm going to be taking you back. When you were discussing the living expenses for someone in South Africa, you were using terms like 6,000 grand. I want us to be clear. $6,000, 6,000.
6,000 rand, like our currency.
6,000. Yeah, so that they are aware, because most people will be like, did you just say $6,000 for monthly rent?
No.
So let's give this a figure. I know that it depends on the location where you are, the province and things like that. How much would you think someone can spend on rent in a month? On the average, like, not like the big city and not like the, but just on the average. Are you still here, or did
so on average, I would say, yes, I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm still here now. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. That's a difficult one, because I think the averages really differ. So I think on average here in Pretoria, I would say around where I live, which is very close to the university, I would say on average, around 5,500 rand. I don't know. I'm trying to just think on average. So about 5,500 rand. Let me put it that way.
Okay, that's for rent, 5,500 rand. How about food? To be honest, Ife's here. She's also moderating behind the scenes. So Ife says 6,000 rand is about $410. So for those of you who are like, okay, what's the conversion? What's the equivalent? So we're talking about $410 per month on rent. So let's talk about food.
I'm curious, how is that? How's the $400? Is that a lot, or is that?
That is a lot less for someone in the United States of America. So,
Mm.
and okay, so let me ask you, for rent, is that a one bedroom, a two bedroom? What is the space like?
I would say when I was looking through just before I moved here, it also just depends. If you're sharing, you can maybe pay about 3,000, 4,000 rand, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, but no, actually, I noticed there were a couple of flats here in Pretoria that were sharing, uh, and they were about 6,000 rand. I could not understand that. So I guess it just depends where you're living. For example, I live in like a one bedroom flat with a kitchen and everything, and that is like on average just between maybe 5,500 and about 6,500. So it depends also where you are, like whether you want to share, whether you want a bigger space. Places here can go up to like 10,000 rand, which I don't really understand for a student, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It also just depends. It depends. But I'd say a good scholarship, especially for like a graduate student, should be around 150,000 rand per annum.
Wow.
And I know that the universities, for example, with our university, the departmental scholarship for the research grant, the most that they give to students is, or the most competitive scholarship is about 120,000 rand, and you can live on that. I think that's enough per annum now. So I think within that you can pay for your accommodation, and you can get good accommodation. You can have your food, you can have you can have everything that you need. But also there are really like other very generous scholarships like the NRF, which I would really recommend, which will give you about 180,000 rand as a PhD student, and you can really live on that. You can pay for anything that has to do with your research, whether it's editing, language editing, whether it is traveling to go conduct research. So I'd say the NRF is pretty generous.
That's interesting. Because I want those scholarships, and you have to find them for me somehow. Just kidding. So yeah, how much do you spend on food in a month? Back to living expenses.
How much does one spend? Because I am
You eat a
so
lot.
bad at things. Yeah, I eat a lot. I personally have to eat a lot in order to perform in the way that I need to perform
Are you
for my.
serious right now? Is that your excuse? So that is your excuse for eating a lot. God, this is the
I
first time
mean,
somebody is telling me to my face. Actually, it's because of the kind of work I do. That's why I eat a lot. Otherwise, I'm not really. I was thinking you're going to tell me, Valeen, nah, I'm not really that person. I don't. What's food? But for you to tell me otherwise and then give me the reason, like, babe, it's because of the work. We do a lot of work. You finished me there. I didn't expect that from you. I felt you were different and decent, but right now you're not. You are a heavy feeder. Accepted. Don't give us any excuse. Just tell us how much you spend. It's okay. We understand. Yes, even me, I do a lot of work, and I eat a lot too.
but really, on a serious note, I feel like I can only ever perform at my optimum if I have a good breakfast, a good lunch, a good supper. I think the last time I had those kinds of habits of like skipping meals and all of that was probably like an undergrad. But from masters, when I started getting really serious about my studies, especially like when with studies, you get so stressed out. So it started taking a toll on my body. So that's when I made the decision that no, I have to eat and I have to eat properly. So that's where that's coming from.
And eat
But
well.
say, yeah, but I would say for food, I am so bad with this because my parents helped me figure out these stuff quite a lot. But I'd say for food, I don't know, is 600 Rand? I think
Oh,
600 Rand
that's
is
fair.
enough for a
I don't know
student.
if you're
Like,
still
you
here.
know,
If you're still
noodles,
here,
that's
please
the
do the
thing.
conversion.
Yeah, but like my lunches comprise of noodles. That I won't lie. I have a better supper and a better breakfast, but most of the time I'd say my lunch is noodles. I'm still a student, so it's not fancy.
So, do you cook more or you buy more out there? Do you so that we can tell if there's a difference?
Yeah, I definitely cook more. I meal prep. So every Sunday and every Wednesday, I cook for the next couple of days. I also just do that for time reasons. I don't want to spend time thinking about what I'm going to eat. I don't want to spend time cooking when I could be working. So literally, when I take my lunch break, it's only to eat and not to prepare anything really, unless it would be those noodles that I was talking about. But I mainly meal prep.
Oh, great. So, what do you do when it's Big Brother time? Do you really meal prep or you?
You know what? Okay, so I'm addicted to Big Brother, but the thing is, I'm only addicted to Big Brother when I'm at home.
And now
Um,
you're not at home.
Now I'm not at home, and also I don't ever have a TV where I study. So I don't have a TV. Only just have Wi-Fi. So during my meal break, like my let's say my lunch break, I'll maybe watch a video or two, but and I listen to the radio in the mornings, but like that's about it. That's about as much consumption of like digital consumption as I can take. But I don't have a TV.
Okay. So
So
that's
yeah.
fine. So we talked about food, we talked about rent, we talked about electricity. Did we talk about that?
Electricity, I don't know. I had the biggest shock when I moved here. Back when I lived in Potchefstroom, I think I used to spend about 200 rands on electricity per month. And I don't know whether that's because I was sharing at the time. So my flatmate and I would put in about 200 rands each, and that would last us the whole month. When I got here, I think for the first month, I had to pay about 600 Rand for electricity. I
Oh,
do
wow.
not know what was happening. I was freaking
Tripled.
out, calling my parents. But I think over time, I've learned to manage the electricity. So at this point in time, my electricity is about 450 Rand per month, which is still a big stretch, I think, for a student. But yeah, that's my current situation.
Oh,
So I
wow.
think maybe in other like places to live, maybe electricity is a bit cheaper.
Okay, I have some comments here. Oh, Daniel is here. Daniel, hi. Hi, Daniel. And okay, roughly 430 US dollars.
Hi, Munir.
Oh, Moni is your friend. Hi, Moni. Hi. If you're here for Longbo and you've been here and we haven't said hi to you, please let us know in the live chat so she can know that her family is here. She's doing a great job. And please keep a date with us every Saturday or Sunday. We're still trying to figure things out. We'll be discussing different topics, and I believe you definitely understand and appreciate the topics that will be discussing in the coming weeks. So I don't want to spill too much, but please, if you're here, shout out to you. Let us know so we can, say hi to you properly here. Okay. So we are done with studying in South Africa. Now we want to talk about you. We want to talk about your journey, why you're the person that you are, why the choice. And I think the best way to start off would be for you to tell us what it is like growing up South African, you know. Let me see. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. have South African. Ooh, that is an interesting one. And it's interesting to me, especially because I think yesterday in our seminar, a big chunk. So yesterday we were touching on gender and diversity and just social identity, right? And I remember one of our articles yesterday was on social class and social class within the organization, social class within the South African context. And what was so interesting is what we were talking about was something that I feel to a certain extent I've experienced, where there's almost a shift that you make. I don't know, Val, if you've ever experienced, I'm sure you've experienced this moving to America for sure, but I come from a very rural town. I love my town. I love my town very much. The town of Stagsprate. It's on the border of Lesotho, Free State, the Eastern Cape. And very rural, 100% Black population. And you kind of have to make that shift. You move from that environment towards the city, right? To whether it's to get a better education or get better opportunities. And I guess the argument of this article was when you leave that setting and you move into a different setting where the social class is higher, where the population group is predominantly white, what does that mean for you? You know what I mean? Where do you fit? Do you still behave in the way that you behave when you're back at home? Or do you then make a shift within your mind every time you move to this area so that you can survive, right? And I think as a South African, that is my experience, where I come from a rural town. My family is very middle class family. And if you understand the dynamic of South Africa, middle class family in South Africa is you still on the borderline of being within that bracket of being poor, but it's just that within the context of your environment, which is the rural area, you would be viewed as better off, right? But the thing is, when you make that shift and you move to the city or you move to an area that has people who are of a much higher social class, you can feel it. You can feel that actually, no, I'm not the same. I don't really fit socially here. So I would say that that's my experience of having to navigate between those two worlds from the time you move. Let's say if you were studying, I studied in a town called Lady Grey, which is like about 40 minutes away from my hometown, very small town, farm town. Still the makeup of our school was much of the people from my hometown, but the minute you start moving to university or you move for work to the city, whether it's in Johannesburg, whether it's Bloemfontein, whether it's a town like Potchefstroom, which is predominantly white, or you're moving to Cape Town, there are those pains. And there is that navigation that you have to kind of undergo, where you are almost prepping yourself to fit within the context of what that is and find who you are within that space. So I would say that is my experience of being South African. And if you have an understanding of just like our Gini coefficient within South Africa, there's such a wide gap between the rich and the poor here. So you almost always, as a Black person, have to work between those two, those two extremes, if I can put it that way. But for the most part, being South African is wonderful. Being South African is really wonderful. I come from a very cultural family, so I really I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of who I am. My parents really raised us to really be proud of who we are and to make our mark within whichever space we enter. So those kinds of foundational values that were instilled from a young age really do help in what I'm talking about, of trying to navigate where you fit in within the broader South African context, right, or broader South African society. But there's so much richness in terms of just who we are. Actually, I want to tell you also another study that we were doing in my class. A lot of this is going to be research based. So we're doing individual differences about 3 weeks ago, and one of my professors has created a scale that looks at personality traits within South Africans, right? And within the scale, my professor is a white male, and the scale that he's created, it's quite interesting because in its inception, when he created it, from a Black person's perspective, it may have maybe looked as though the lens through which he had written the study was very white, in that there were groupings of Black people that weren't really, I don't know, reflective of what is true within the South African context. So I am Xhosa, but within Xhosa, the Xhosa people, there's like, it's so dynamic, you know what I mean? So even though I'm Xhosa, I'm Hlubi, so I won't necessarily be like a Tembu Xhosa, you know what I mean? So what this study was doing, the scale, is that it would group Nguni people, and within the Nguni people, it's Zulu, Xhosa people, and and such and such. But like, the thing is, you can't group, because we're so dynamic, even within our respective cultures. Grouping us within a broader Nguni setting would be an injustice almost, right? But fortunately, the study is continuously being reworked. He's broadening I guess the clusters under which he puts us culturally. But basically, going back to what I was trying to say, we're just such a rich society. We're so diverse, and it's an advantage and sometimes a disadvantage. But when you really look in depth and like open yourself up to learn more about us as a people, it's really such a wonderful thing and a pride.
How do you feel growing up in the same country as Nelson Mandela?
Val, how did I know you were going to ask that? It feels good.
Why would I not ask that?
It feels good. It feels really good. And it really feels good in the sense that, like, I feel like I have a great pride towards the fact that I'm from not only the same country. Timmy, hello. That's one of my best friends. But not only being from the same country, but being from the same province, and like I said, being from the same tribe, even though I'm not necessarily from the Batembu people, I'm still within, Xhosa people. So it really is such a great pride, and it really works well with the essays. I know, like, every time I apply something international, I have to put it in there. But I really,
oh my God.
You kind of just put a quote there, and you're like the great Nelson Mandela. But those foundational values that I was talking about, that my parents raised us with, one that really rings true to my life and my siblings is that education is the one tool that you can use to not only change the world, but to really change the trajectory of your life. So constantly, that's always something in my mind. That you can really use education to achieve whatever your heart desires, you know what I mean? It may not be a formal education, but really being educated just changes something in the way that you view things, you view the world, you view yourself. So going back to your question, it really is such a great pride. He sacrificed so much, including, I think he's more nuclear family relations in order for us to live in what is now a democratic South Africa. I think there's still a lot of work. And I think that it's in the hands of really like everyone, but everyone to really be open to tackling the problems that our society faces. I know also just like touching on my research again, like everything is about that. We were having a
You have
discussion.
to.
Yeah, we were having a discussion with one of my professors in one of our classes on leadership, and we have this one wonderful professor called Professor Stella Ngomo, who is American, but moved here. Her husband is South African, and they moved here, and she does such wonderful scholarly work on the African, context, not only South Africa, but just the African context. And one thing that really has been such a big question within our minds, like my peers and I, is why is it that South Africans are so scared? When the grouping of gender and diversity within research is actually just gender. If you really look at literature and what people are producing in within the research setting, it's always when you talk about gender and diversity, it's always gender. People are so scared to touch race, and race is a very significant part of our society. Um, and there's a lot that needs to be done. We have settings where there's diversity, and there are all these tokens of people who can't, as a token, you really can't make much of a change, right? But the thing is, there's a lack in inclusion, there's a lack of true transformation within these settings. And really, what is transformation and what is inclusion within the South African context? And people are really afraid to touch that. So even though we are a very democratic and diverse society, there's still so much work that needs to go into diversity within our South African context.
You're so passionate when you talk about diversity, gender, inclusion, everything like that. At what point did you finally discover or say to yourself, this is it, this is what I wanted to do? Because I know for most people, it's really hard for you to, get to discover yourself or discover what you're passionate about in a particular field.
Mm.
When was that for you? Was there something that led to that? Or it's just, when did you get to the revelation? How did it happen? Was it from the very onset, you knew this is where I'm going to, this is where my interest lies? Or over time you started to add things up and it, just fit into what you were trying to achieve?
I think, I think this year really played an integral part in my interest in gender and diversity. I think it started long ago, like a couple of years ago, but like I said, I did not have the confidence at that point in time to tackle what I think needs to, or the brick that I think I can contribute to the bigger wall of diversity in South Africa, right? So with what I was talking about earlier, and this is just my personal experience, talking about that shift from, a town where you all Black people and moving to these cities throughout your educational experience, which are predominantly white, I had a lot of racial experiences where I personally experienced racism, which was not like, that was probably like one of the worst experiences. A good experience is that so I've been to a number of universities. This is my third university that I'm studying at. So my first university, I won't name the university, but I was a competing athlete for that particular university.
Wow.
And I remember being
I
the
didn't
only,
know that about you.
yeah. So I remember being the only Black girl in the athletics team. And So we would go to we would go to certain meetings to go compete. And so let's say there's about 10. I remember there was this one a situation where the university only had to choose 10 girls, 10 boys, one per item, right? And so I was the only Black girl. And of course, we had to share rooms. And the one white girl didn't want to share a room with me because, of course, I'm Black, proudly so. But like, that was such a weird experience for me, because then you grow up in this family where you're told to have your chest out and to be proud and, to always make your mark and, to be bold. And then you find yourself in this situation where it's so uncomfortable. You're actually just like, what the heck is going on here? And I had a lot of those experiences throughout my time in that particular university. And I think at that point in time, I started developing a lot of resentment, but then had to move to another university to start kind of, breaking down those walls that I had now created. And so when I moved to UP, I remember at the beginning, I think with our first introductory session, I remember my wonderful professor, she said, once you do your PhD, it's almost like the beginning of your career. So you need to know what you want to be known for. So if I then decide to, because in my master's, I was dealing with policies. So if I want to be known as Longbo, the policy girl, then continue with the policies. But you have to be very strategic in choosing the sub-discipline that you want to pursue within your PhD, because that's what you're going to be known for the rest of your life. And with all the seminars that keep touching on all these things, and just like, I love just the approach here where there is no fear in terms of touching race. Like, I think every single seminar we're talking about how race, because race is a part of our context. We can't run away from it, it touches on everything, whether it's leadership, whether it's individual differences, whether it's social identity, whether it's status. That's the thing. Class has a lot to do with race within our particular context, right? So I think the more I was just reading more in literature, that's when I was just like, if there's anything I want to be known for, it's exactly that, gender and diversity. That's what I want to be known for. So I think that's when the real interest started, and I just started reading more on it, and I was just like, this just makes sense. So that's how that came about. It's actually, I think the foundational parts of it are my history and my experiences, but currently what I'm experiencing now is what's really pushing it forward and making me even more passionate about it.
That's interesting. It felt like I was reading a novel, to be honest, like an audio version. Like, oh my God. When is part two? When is part two? Is this season one? I need season two already. What's going on? Oh, wow.
Man.
So how has it been so far being a PhD student? What is it like in terms of commitment, in terms of, your personal life? Is there a difference between when you were, your master's and now that you're undergoing your PhD program, or that has tripled? So generally, for anyone that is watching and still thinking, okay, now this girl is inspiring, but what is it like? People need to know the true picture of things and understand that as much as it is beautiful to be, a PhD student, everybody wants a PhD. Well, not everybody, but what are the things that people can do to be prepared or to prepare you, or what should you start doing right now?
Okay, Val, I think, prepared. I'll touch on that, on how you should be prepared. But let me start with my current experience of what it's like to be a PhD student. It is a lot. I made a conscious decision to take on my first year of PhD studies on a full-time basis. So the wonderful thing about the program that I'm in here at UP is that the PhD is actually a 2-year program, but under the leadership of Prof. Hubler, who is the leader of our program, we have 1 year. So she is an American academic, right, who's moved here to South Africa. So they created now the learning program, which is 1 year in addition to the 2 years. So what we're currently doing now is that we're touching on a lot of literature within our discipline, everything that is not only relevant, but very important to the field. And what's great about it is that even though coming from masters, you might have come in thinking, you know what, I've got this topic and this is what I want to research. I'm finding myself, and I think my peers would agree, that now we're finding ourselves in a process where our ideas are constantly changing because we're being exposed to all these different ideas within the discipline. I, in my master's, I focused on policies, HR policies specifically. And I was working with the AMO theory, but that was the only theory I knew. But now there's so many links that I understand in terms of theory and in terms of specific things that we can research. When with leader, you can look at leader member exchange theory, transformational leadership theory. You can look at organizational citizenship behavior. With, let's say, anything that has to do with inclusion or diversity, you look at social identity theory. So all these links are now starting to occur because of how much we're reading. And the stretch is painful. I don't want to lie. Like I said earlier when we started the session, I was taking a nap just before the session because I just got out of a seminar. And the seminars, I literally sit in the seminar, and I can just feel my head just stretching, and I'm just like, my head is painful. I don't get it, but I'm looking forward to the day where I'm like, I get why I had to go through that, right? One of our professors, Prof. Ngomo, she says at the beginning of the program, she said, trust the process. And every time I have a discussion with my parents, I'm like, I understand. Like, I understand. Like, it's really difficult. And it seems like every session is more difficult than the last one, but the last one was kind of preparing you for the next one. So that's what I'm currently experiencing. And going into this, I thought I could take on, I remember sending in my CV to one of our professors and saying that I was open to assisting with research just as a part-time job. And man, oh man, am I glad that I didn't on anything. There's just no time. Like, there's honestly no time. You have to read. You have a bunch of readings. Let's say, I remember the one session we had about 16 readings to get through before the session. And you're not you expected to contribute to the conversation. You're expected to give your ideas, what you think. You're expected to come up with new ideas coming from the particular research. So there's just a shift in the way that you think, and you start seeing it as you go on. But I honestly don't know how my peers, we've got a little support group. I don't know if they're here, but like two of my peers and I have a WhatsApp support group where we're constantly just trying to make jokes on the group. And I think like on about 2 occasions now, they've said that they wish they were doing this full time. And I completely understand, because I'm struggling and I'm doing it full time. So that's the experience. It's hard, it's painful, but I have an understanding that these are growing pains. And I think going into this, there's such an importance of just knowing why you started, having a certain level of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I personally am not an extrinsically motivated person. I don't get motivated by seeing someone else doing something. It's all like, it's something I want for myself. And that's what keeps pushing me. So you need to know, and other people are different. Some people may see someone else doing it and they're like, you know what, that really pushes me. So you need to know your why, and you need to hold on to that throughout this process. So It's really, really hard. Like I can't look, I'm looking for it. I didn't have an Easter break. I was working throughout the Easter break. But I just look forward to going home and spending some time with my parents whenever the opportunity avails itself. But we're busy until the end of November. We've got an exam now in June, and then I have another exam in November, and that's like a 3-day exam. Can you imagine, Val? I don't even understand. We we collect our exam paper on Friday, and then we have to submit it on Sunday. But I'm like, I don't understand. Like, when are we gonna sleep? But like,
Oh my God.
like
Oh,
there's just something I just don't understand. It's very intensive, and I think our professors warned us from the beginning. But you know, sometimes you'll hear a professor saying it's really hard, and you're like, yeah.
I can do it. I'm ready.
Yeah, I think there have been many times where I'm like, I don't think I can do it. Like, and it's what, April? It's still April. But I just keep pushing. I don't know. I don't sleep. I have a very weird schedule at the moment because what I do is that I wake up around 6. I'll listen to the radio. I like listening to the radio. So I'll have my radio session and a bit of workout in the morning. At 8 o'clock, I start with my work until around 12. I take a break at 12, eat, and then take a bit of a nap. I wake up around 1:30 or 2, and then I'll work until around 7. And then from 7, I try take another nap after I eat. And then I wake up again around 11, 12 and try work until 3 o'clock. And then at 3, I'll sleep again. And then I'll wake up at 6 again. So right now I have that kind of dysfunctional, I think it's a bit of a dysfunctional schedule, but it's the only way I'm getting by. And it's the only way I can finish the readings, because I also consider myself a much slower reader than some of my peers. So I have to just push a little harder, because I know, okay, maybe I'm not so strong in this area, but I know I'm strong in a particular area and I capitalize on that. So at the moment, it's really hard, but I'm really, like I said earlier, I'm looking forward to the day where I can look back and I'm like, I get it. It had to happen. And now I'm this person, you know? But to answer your other question on how you prepare for PhD studies, honestly speaking, like with me, I started last year, I started my master's in 2019, and I submitted my dissertation in May 2020. But I started applying to PhD programs in, I think it was February or March last year. I started my application process. And that was basically because I had an understanding of the fact that I needed a supervisor who has an interest in my field. And so I needed to know which people are available in which universities in order for me to then apply to those universities. And that was a real struggle. I don't want to lie. I think I was in conversations with about 3-4 universities. And in every single university except for UP, I was sent from one department to the next. I remember in the one university, I submitted my draft proposal, and I submitted it to the industrial psychology department. They were like, no, it sounds a bit like it should be in the School of Public Policy. And I was like, okay. So I sent it there, and then they were like, no, there's a huge HR element to this, so we don't really deal with that. Maybe try sending it to the School of I remember it was like public management or something like that. I sent it there. They were like, no, we don't work with this, sorry, maybe try the business school. I sent it to the business school. The business school was like sending me around to each and every academic. And man, that was really hard. And I think I was doing that up until around August. And that can really be a disadvantage because all the funding, like the main funding, I spoke earlier about how I have such a huge preference for the NRF. The NRF closes, yes, on their website, they say that postgraduate funding closes in December. But the thing is, each university has a closing date for their NRF funding, and that's like the last one is probably around June, July. So you miss out on that funding while you're doing this roundabout trying to find where, because here you can only apply for NRF funding to one university. So if I apply to the NRF, I have to specifically say the funding is for the University of Pretoria. I made the mistake of applying for NRF funding at another university, and I lost out on that funding. But I mean, these are things that you learn as you go, right? So I just spent so much time doing all this, going around, and so I think I'd advise that once you have your proposal, especially for people who want to apply to the PhD program, once you've written your proposal, make sure it's ready by, let's say, around March, April, like right now, and then start sending out your feelers, start sending it out, start Googling academics who are within these universities who work with your particular area or are specialists within your area. Start sending them your work and asking whether they capacity if you're not in a program, like a learning program like the one I'm in. And then from there, you're able to then, maybe they'll give you guidance and say, maybe it's not working here, maybe try at a different university. And then from there, you can apply to the university. But start that process as early as possible in order for you to meet the time limit of applying to a particular university. So I'd say how you prepare is to make sure that you've got your proposal, your draft proposal, ready very early on, and then start sending it out to the universities and send it well in advance, so that you can know, okay, this is maybe the university that is interested in my area, and then you can start the application process. Because also those are two different things. Approaching the supervisor and actually applying to the university are two different processes. So start early and just be relentless and don't give up until you get the university that resonates with the particular research you're interested in.
So going forward, what are your future plans?
My future plans, Val. Okay, at the moment, I plan to continue being a full-time student this year because I cannot do anything else. Just getting through the exams, because with our program, another thing that I wanted to say is that a lot of other universities have, I don't know, another system in terms of PhD studies where you can kind of prolong your studies with the PhD. With my program, the exam in June and the exam in November are determiners of whether you stay in the program. So if I were to do badly in the exam now in June, as my professor likes to say, she will have to have that difficult conversation with me. So our PhD program is on a 6-month check-in basis. So they check in to see if you're still good. If you're not, you're out of the program. If you're not good at the end of the year, you are out of the program. So I plan to do the PhD program full-time for the rest of the year. And then, as I mentioned, I would like to apply to the Fulbright Scholarship as a visiting scholar for next year. So America, the US, is really good in terms of diversity work, especially within organizations. There are a lot of really good leading scholars and universities that really do well, like are almost specializing within this field. So with us, instead of having one, within our program, instead of having one supervisor, like the traditional PhD, we have a committee. So I have a committee of 3 people who are helping me to do my research. And there's an element there where I can choose an international scholar. So I'd like to align that with the Fulbright Scholarship and maybe have 1 year where I can be a visiting student to a US university, whichever one will have me, and then conduct my research for 1 year there, and then come back to finish off in my third year. So at this point in time, those are the plans. My career goals are just to become a researcher. I want to just keep writing and producing research, and probably have that element of being of lecturing and stuff like that. But my main interest is really in research, and becoming an international scholar. So that's currently where I am with that.
Wow, it was really nice learning from you, listening to you speak and share your journey, your experience, and what the future holds. I really want us to do this more often. I mean, I wish it was something we can do daily, but obviously PhD demands a lot of time, so that's not going to happen.
And
As much
it's so
as we love,
therapeutic,
yeah.
Val. Thank you so much. It's so therapeutic.
Really, I didn't even think about it that way. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, the
you
thing is,
know,
the PhD is very isolating. I won't lie. If you don't have, for example, with me, I'm new to the city. I don't really have friends yet. Have a wonderful friend in my program who just, and she's an industrial psychologist by profession. And she really just does such a good job of taking care of me. Every week we have our weekly walks. After every two seminars, because our seminars are about 7 hours long. We go and we debrief. She calls it the debriefing session, where we're just like talking about everything and nothing. And so she really just does such a good job of taking care of my mental health without even
no,
realizing the impact that she's having on me. This program is very isolating, because you are working on something where you don't have a 9 to 5 like everyone else. But then everyone thinks maybe because you're a student you have a bit of time, but you actually don't have time, and you don't know how to communicate that, because then what do you say? No, I'm busy with my studies. But then you're like, but studying is not really that bad. And you're like, actually it literally feels like it's a 24-hour job, because I can't get through these readings. I can't seem to get through these readings. And 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 the thing is, with our program, there are consequences to not getting through the readings on time. We've already had so many people that decided to leave the program because it was just too much for them, and that's understandable. But so it's very isolating in the sense that you have people who may understand on a certain level, but you never quite find a person who fully understands what you're going through. You're exhausted. There's a level of just like feeling a bit depressed, and a lot of what's this called, imposter syndrome, where you'll study so much and then you go to the lecture and your professor is an international scholar, and you're trying to explain what you think of the work, and you're just thinking, at some point she's bound to realize that I'm actually not that smart, right? Like you get that feeling where you like, some point she's just gonna call me out and be like, how in the world did you get into this program? So you go through and it's so weird because you go through that too, just feeling like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, but you're pushing or you're giving your all, but you still feel like you're going nowhere slowly, or you have nothing to show for it. So it is very, very isolating. You spend a lot of your time by yourself, getting through the readings, doing the work. And by the time you're meeting up with people, you're trying to explain how you feel, and you're not sure if they understand. So it's so weird, but that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Very isolating, Val. So this is very therapeutic. Thank you very much.
thank you for coming, and I really did enjoy everything. And I'm looking forward to more sessions with you where we get to discuss, touch on so many other topics. So if you want to ask Longbo any question, feel free to just drop them in the live chat or in the comments if you're watching this as a replay, and I'll reach out to her. I should have answers for you as well. If you want to connect with her, at the moment I know she's off social media. I don't know how she agreed too. I mean, I was so surprised last week she called in. So we're getting there. But right now, to the best of my knowledge, she's off social media. So if you have any questions for her, just drop them in the live chat or in the comments down below, and I'll reach out to her and she'll definitely provide answers to you as well. To all the friends that came here to support Longbo, I want to say a huge shout out to you. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I do hope that you keep a date with us, because we're going to bring something very fruitful and beneficial to you in the coming weeks. We're planning something together and we're going to have her here. To Ife, who was the backman moderator, thank you for the messages you were sending to me via WhatsApp. I really did have that much support behind the scenes, so that's good. So I believe this is the end of today's live session, and I hope you guys are doing okay. Mental check-in. I hope you're fine. Like she said, take some time out. Go for a walk. Look for that friend. Like what's your friend's name? The one that's like the mental health expert, and she doesn't know it. Look for that one friend and take some time to just take a walk. Rest. Like she said, she was taking a nap before the live started, so also find time to rest. It's important, and when everything seems overwhelming, just reach out to somebody, create a support group, ask your friends if they're dealing with anything, so you can both, the more you talk about things like this, the more relief you find. And if you listen to what Longbo was saying, she said that this session was very therapeutic. And whether you believe it or not, just talking about, for this moment, she was actually not talking about school. She was talking about school, but she wasn't reading. It wasn't like a task to her. So she was actually doing something. And even though it's related to school, because she ended up talking about research here, research here, research here, research here. It was more fun, more of her knowing that she's actually helping someone out there and just, enjoying the whole process. So it is important that you take out time to treat yourself, check in with your mental health, reach out to your family and friends, and just take the whole process one step at a time. And according to her professor, I can't remember the professor's name, trust the process. Don't give up. Don't give up until you get it, okay? So until next time, we'll see you next week. Let's just hear something from Longbo before we leave. What's your parting word, your parting gift, your parting speech? Speak to us.
Nothing much, Val, just to say thank you so much. I'm always thanking you for just the wonderful contribution you're making. You literally, as my one prof says, you're putting your brick, and that's the brick on the wall, the big wall. You're putting your brick, and that's your mark in the world. And really keep on keeping on. This is wonderful. And it's a wonderful platform where, we as young people who want to make it in something are able to come here and check in with you every single week and, find out about all these wonderful opportunities that you discuss with your guests and that you discuss as a person who was studying in the United States of America and is now working and looking to study some more in the United States. So just like watching your journey is so beautiful to us to watch, and just keep on keeping on. Yay. Wonderful, Val.
I can't wait to come to South Africa.
I can't wait to. Yeah. You know what I can't wait for? I can't wait to go to Nigeria.
Yes. And I don't want you to go to Nigeria without me. So hold on.
Can I just tell you, I have this thing that I do whenever I'm feeling super, super down, with my studies. I switch on that song by Davido, Joe. And I just dance my heart out. I just dance my heart out. I cannot. And you know how much Afro beats I can dance, Val. Afro beats.
You should do some for us next week.
I'm telling you.
I'm going to. Now I know the song.
When we first met during when last year. That's all I was doing. I would just practice in my room and then I'd go dance for my mom and dad. Whenever I had a break from writing my dissertation, I'd just go and show them, and I'm like, how do you think I'm doing this? And then my dad would be like, I think you must do it more like Prince. Just try the way Prince does it.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
And so now I really am so proud to say that I'm a legit Afrobeats dancer. So I can't wait to come to Nigeria because all I want to do is go to Abuja
Yeah.
and dance.
I love the way you said it. And dance. Oh, please wait, because I want to be in Nigeria when you come. It's going to be fun. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week. Until then, it's a bye-bye from Valeen Oseh and
Lonwabo Capela.
she almost didn't get that part. Okay, we'll do it again. Until we see you again next time, I remain Valeen Oseh and
Lonwabo Capela.
Yay! Bye.